that all work? Obviously, I've had Cameron Crick in the studio, like talking about how to, get sponsors in Australia. But how do you have to, market yourself over there and get people involved? Because obviously you've got the Australian background, not the Japanese. So how do you entice them to back you instead of, someone local? You know what I mean?
Well, actually, I just found like my niche there. So like working out like what's going to be a fit for me. And basically it's like the expat group.
Yep.
So I got myself just around because Philippe as well is like an expat. And then there's like a pretty, substantial community of like foreigners living in there in Tokyo for various reasons, businesses or usually business really. And I joined forces with some of those like little companies in there, like Tokyo Supercars, for example, became an ambassador for them, got to meet a lot of people. And just doing that sort of route basically was like a big start in expanding the network for one, and then finding people that are kind of the right fit for this kind of idea because they like cars and, they're also foreigners here. It's quite relatable. So that was my start basically. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And was it Audi then Honda basically, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like Audi, F3, Volkswagen, then Honda in 2020.
What's the best one that you found working with though? Like
Honda.
It
was very cool. Yeah. I think just because like I was also helping develop the car and we're also developing Yokohama's tire. So it was like, because Super GT, it's kind of like a tire war as well as a manufacturer war. There's like Yokohama, Bridgestone, Dunlop, Michelin.
A bit like supercars in the 90s.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think even go-karting had that, back in the 90s too.
Yeah.
I think, I remember Troy was saying he was developing like the tire for Vega or something like that.
Yeah, Vega and Bridgestone.
Yeah, right.
So that'd be interesting because now in the motorsport landscape, it's pretty much carbon copy or cut and copy paste. And it's everything basically the same. Same. Ferrari, F1, then there's, they've all got the same tire manufacturer.
Exactly, yeah. So this was like, I didn't know it was like this variable when I first came in with the Audi team because like all the brands obviously have their own BOP, right? Like the performance of the vehicle is adjusted per series. But then you have another element of, the variables, which is the tires. And some cars work really well. Like Yokohama, it's developed on GTRs. So they always work well on GTRs, but they don't really work that well on the Audi.
Yeah.
And I think Audi, it's one of the best running costs. Like Audi and Mercedes, running cost is really good, so it's popular for teams. Yokohama, it's also a good cost, for the season. So for the high budget teams, they'll just put the best stuff on when they can. But for this kind of team, like they were quite budget conscious, so they had to find the balance basically.
Yeah.
For that, yeah. But then developing the tire with Bridgestone, with Yokohama, was really awesome too. Because like you'd pick your sidewall, you'd pick your compound, you'd pick your construction type. You'd just say like they'd give you like X amount of sets for preseason testing, and then Mugen was running all of the like ECU and electronic side. So they'd say we need you to test like this, and give us your feedback on like some ECU maps. And then Yokohama would say like this on the compounds. Pick your best stuff, put it together.
Yeah.
That was so cool.
Did you get days at the track to yourself at all during these testing sessions, or did you get a lot of track time is what I'm saying?
Not really. It's very like controlled. So for budget reasons, the series restricts your track time. So you have official testing only for the series or like tire testing for the manufacturer.
Yeah. So
I was just running in those two basically.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about coming back here though and running any? Yeah, I know you did the Bathurst race or Bathurst Formula Ford and the 12-hour. But did you ever cross your mind going, maybe I could try racing in Australia at all, or were you just not interested at all?
Well, like I said, I was really interested in IndyCar and then Super GT, Super Formula. Yeah. Not so much like V8 Supercars, which is what it was at the time.
Yeah.
And nowadays, like COVID's finished, things are opening back up. I'm kind of opening my radar again to what's around. So chatting with GT World Challenge teams, considering maybe looking at supercar stuff, but it's like a new thought basically.
How do you find with the engineering, because Japan's always really on top of their technology. It's a big thing for them, and what comes out of university is different. What I found, because I did engineering at their universities over there, and the level, like you've got first year students around a university with robots, like it's insane, right? And we do it like there's a lot of intelligent people here. It's like, it's just the resources there are different, I think, which is what we don't necessarily have here. How do you find it in the pit, say, with your team, and what's set up technological wise compared to say you're at a 24-hour event in Japan versus if you came here and did the 12-hour at Bathurst, how do you compare the two? Do you think the technology's different that Japan's got because we're not necessarily seeing it, or do you think it's on par with how they do things?
I've only experienced like the Australian side when it comes to the 12-hour really.
Yep.
And obviously that's always like very much a private team thing. But Japan's thing is they have like the whole R&D aspect as well, because if it's the manufacturer of the car or the tire, they've got a whole heap of sensors, a whole heap of like plans for like, trying different things.
Yep.
Or if it's like a parts maker like Modulo or Endless or something, they want to develop their parts too. So there's a whole, I think a whole lot more focus on like improvement. Whereas I think in Australia and probably more like global racing, you just have like what's FIA homologated. So you don't even think about that stuff. You just focus on your data, your setup and your regular sensors. So that's the main point of difference, I think, because of the open development aspect.
Yeah, okay. Are they sort of in line more, I know it's a little bit different, of course, but to F1 where they're trying to always look for technological improvements and what they can do year on year and changing, because we see F1 come through into the commercial market. Is that similar to what Japan's sort of trying to do as well?
A little bit, yeah. We developed some stuff during my Honda time that they said I can't tell anyone else about because like they want to use it for the future and that kind of thing. So it's not to the extent like F1, you can probably just do it like, everything, right? Wing, engine improvement. Of course, within the regulation, it's like a smaller version of that, basically. So they'll pick some key components, and then they'll try and develop that as well, because it's a lot less restricted. It's not FIA GT3, it's GT300. So there's actually like a carbon fiber tub chassis as well that's homologated, and it's just a bit open, basically. That car you can actually develop the aero on as well.
Yeah.
So it's like that.
This is a little bit out of that, but still in the technological realm, because there's so much talk on EVs. Do you see, because we've seen Toyota talk, I was going to say they're talking about the hydrogen car. Are you seeing in Japan, because we're not necessarily seeing all the news there, because they're obviously developing these technologies at racetracks and so forth and then in-house elsewhere. Are you seeing, is there a shift in Japan? Are they on the EV trail or are they looking more at hydrogen and other options that maybe that we're not, US, Australia and others haven't looked at yet?
They're pretty heavily invested in hydrogen.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so Toyota and Honda are pretty much the two that are pushing that the hardest, particularly Toyota.
Yeah, okay.
You might have seen, so the boss or chairman of Toyota is Akio Toyoda. He actually races in Super Taikyu as well as the AM driver for that car.
Yeah, okay.
And his car is like a hydrogen-powered Corolla.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Yeah, so they're developing that in Super Taikyu. And I think the only one that's focusing on EV is really Nissan.
Yeah.
They've got a bit more of an international mindset, and I think because they're kind of owned and partially like controlled from overseas, chairman and things like that, it's a bit more connected. But yeah, I think it's tricky because in Japan, you probably remember, right? Like the parking, it's really limited.
Yes,
for the everyday person.
And there's those car parks where they, you drop it off and they stack them.
Yeah, so mine's like that.
Like the thing we watched.
Like that.
Yeah. It's actually quite terrifying. I remember actually we thought it was funny at like 3 a.m. to ask the attendants to let us stand on, there's like a big circle where you drive your car up on, but it goes around in circles before they take it up. We'd be asked so we could stand on it and be twirled around.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so common, that stuff.
Yeah.
So like the parking at my house is like that too. It's a machine one.
Yep.
But you can't charge an EV in those because you got to plug into a wire, but the car's going to be moving around. So I think it's a little bit of that's all they got,
So what's your take on the future? Is it EV or is it hydrogen? Or do you reckon we've still got because F1's still at that point where they're trying to go to like a healthier fuel.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. We're in this weird patch of the world where it's everyone's got their own quarter basically.
Yeah, I think the majority is pretty heavily leaning on EV, probably mainly because like Tesla's been really successful, and then they've got like integration further for your house and stuff like that. They kind of link it all up. Like Tesla's basically a phone, right? Go home, charge it from your roof or store it in your battery. Yeah, it's a pretty like holistic setup. I think that's pretty good. Yeah, I think EV in Japan, it's pretty hard though. So they might be the ones to push the hydrogen.
It will be interesting because I still think there's a lot of questions around EV. Like I read a lot, I was talking to Dan about, like in the States, they were saying the production of these batteries is absolutely decimating farmland because of all the water that gets seeped out to do it. And it's going to be interesting to see, is this the answer, and then how they dispose of the batteries. And
it takes 4 hours to put out a car, a Tesla, apparently.
I saw some crazy stories online about the fire he's trying to put across the world, different Teslas out and that. So, but I think we're trying to work to something better, but then it's trying to find the hiccups. And I thought it was really interesting watching the hydrogen, like how does that have less hiccups than what we're seeing with the EVs and that?
Yeah, well, people get worried because hydrogen can be like a bomb, right?
Yes,
you don't want to crash
true.
a car like that. But apparently it's not in a state where it's going to be at risk of crashing and turning into a bomb.
Yeah.
So that's a hiccup that maybe it can avoid. Yeah.
Do they have any on the road yet in Japan, or is this just
heaps?
They actually are heaps on the road. And are they having any incidents with them?
Not that I know of.
Yeah,
I think the only downside with hydrogen at the moment is just expensive to fill up.
Okay, yeah.
But that's like, eventually if there's enough demand, there'll be enough supply and it can fix it probably.
It'll change, yeah.
Right. But a lot of the hybrids over there are actually hydrogen hybrids rather than EV hybrids.
Okay, yeah.
And you've done, actually, go back to your racing a bit here.
Yeah.
You've actually done a bit of GT4 racing as well, haven't you?
Now and then, yeah.
Now and then.
Yeah,
you've done so much stuff. Actually, now they're trying to get GT4 going next year on their own here in Australia. And you've obviously gone out to the supercars and seen, the GT World Challenge. There was one GT4 there, I think, on that weekend. But how do you think it is over in Japan when you drove it? Was it a big field? Was it healthy, or was it kind of just...
GT4, it's the biggest field in Super Taikyu, actually.
Really?
Japan love GT4.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's actually a good thing for Australia here. Do you know what I mean? Like GT4 is because everyone likes to talk about, even on the internet, you're just like, oh, why doesn't supercars go to GT4? Because it's not that much between a production car and a